I want you to do something right now. Swallow once, just once, and notice what you feel at the back of your throat. Is there something sitting there? A thickness, a coating that just will not go away no matter how many times you clear your throat this morning? Now, here is what I want you to think about. You have probably been clearing your throat dozens of times every single day. And if I asked you when it started, you might not even be able to give me a clear answer. It crept up on you slowly. First, it was just mornings, then it was all day, and now it is just part of your life. You carry water everywhere. You avoid certain foods. You have probably tried every home remedy your neighbors and relatives could suggest, and yet here you are. Here is what I need you to hear. That mucus is not random. It is not simply your age catching up with you. Your body does not do things randomly. Every persistent symptom is your body's way of communicating something specific. The question is whether you know how to listen. And today I'm going to teach you how, because in my experience working with older adults in preventive health, I have seen this particular symptom, persistent throat mucus, misunderstood and mismanaged more than almost any other. People are handed lozenges, they are told to drink more water, they are dismissed, and the actual cause, sitting quietly underneath everything, never gets addressed. Today we are going to change that. I'm going to walk you through 5 specific research-supported causes of persistent throat mucus in adults over 55. And I'm going to do something that most videos on this topic never do. I'm going to tell you which 2 of these causes are almost certainly working together in your body right now, because they almost always do, and how that combination makes everything dramatically worse. My name is Dr. William. I work in preventive health and senior wellness, and my commitment to this community is always the same. Plain language, real research, practical steps you can start using tonight. Before we go any further, drop a comment below and tell me this. Is your throat mucus worse first thing in the morning, or does it stay with you all day long? Because your answer to that one question actually tells me quite a lot about what is driving this in your body. Write morning or all day in the comments. I read every single one. Now, let us get into it, starting with a piece of biology that most people have never been told, and it changes everything about how you understand this problem. Your body produces mucus every single day, nonstop around the clock, and that is completely normal and completely healthy. Mucus is your body's protective coating for your airways. It catches bacteria, dust, and viruses before they can settle deeper into your lungs. It keeps the delicate tissue lining your throat moist and resilient. Without mucus, your airways would dry out, crack, and become vulnerable to every pathogen you encounter. Mucus is not the problem. The problem is what happens to that mucus as we get older. Here is something that research has confirmed clearly, but that most people are never told by their doctors. There is a system in your body called mucociliary clearance. Your airways are lined with millions of microscopic hair-like structures called cilia. Their job, done millions of times a day without you ever noticing, is to sweep mucus upward and outward, keeping it thin and moving so it never accumulates. In a younger adult, this system is efficient and fast. Mucus gets produced and cleared almost instantly. But studies confirm that as we age, these cilia slow down. They beat less frequently, and the result is that mucus that would have been swept clear in seconds at age 40 can pool and accumulate for hours at age 65 or 70. What this means practically is that any factor pushing your body toward excess mucus production will hit harder and last longer in an older adult than in a younger person. That is not a complaint about aging. It is simply the physiology, and understanding it is the foundation of everything we are going to talk about today. So, with that context in place, here are the 5 causes. And I want you to listen carefully because I'm going to tell you which ones tend to stack on top of each other. The first cause is one I want you to pay very close attention to because research consistently shows it is the most frequently missed explanation for persistent throat mucus in this age group. It is called laryngopharyngeal reflux. You may have never heard that term. Let me explain it in plain language. Most people are familiar with heartburn, that burning feeling in the chest after a heavy meal, classic acid reflux. But there is a quieter, more deceptive version of this problem, one with no chest burning, no obvious digestive discomfort whatsoever, just a throat that will not settle down. Here is what happens. At the junction where your esophagus meets your stomach, there is a muscular ring called a valve. Its only job is to stay closed after you eat, keeping stomach acid locked away where it belongs. As we age, this valve can gradually lose tone, like a rubber band that has been stretched too many times. And when that valve does not close completely, stomach acid makes its way upward, not just into the esophagus, but all the way up into the throat, the voice box, and sometimes even the nasal passages. Now, here is the biological detail that makes this so significant. The tissues of your throat are not built to handle acid the way your esophagus is. Even the smallest trace of acid reaching your throat triggers an immediate protective response. Your body rushes to produce thick mucus to coat and protect that irritated tissue. This is completely logical biology, but when this is happening night after night while you sleep, you wake up every single morning to that familiar heaviness at the back of your throat, and you have no idea why. Because there is no heartburn, no chest pain, no clue pointing toward your stomach. Research published in clinical ENT literature shows that up to half of people with this condition report no heartburn at all, just chronic throat clearing, a voice that sounds rough in the mornings, and mucus that starts accumulating the moment they wake up. Ask yourself honestly, is your throat significantly worse in the morning than it is later in the day? Does it worsen when you bend forward? Has your voice sounded different when you first wake up? These are the fingerprints of silent reflux. And when I get to the action plan, I will give you specific, practical steps that can begin making a difference tonight. One additional note here that is worth your process. If you regularly take anti-inflammatory medications for joint pain, ibuprofen or naproxen, for example, peer-reviewed research has established that this class of medications reduces the body's natural protection of the stomach lining. That makes acid reflux, including the silent variety, significantly more likely to occur or worsen. If you take these medications regularly and your throat has been persistently bothered, please bring that connection up specifically with your doctor. Before we begin, take a second and tell me your name and where you're tuning in from. I go through the comments and I genuinely want to know who I'm speaking to and supporting here. The second cause is one that tends to arrive quietly and go unnoticed for exactly that reason. When people think of sinus problems, they imagine the dramatic version: intense facial pressure, throbbing forehead, nose completely blocked, that picture perfect sinus infection. But in many adults over 55, chronic sinus inflammation presents almost invisibly. Breathing feels mostly fine, no significant headache, and yet the sinuses, mildly swollen and producing slightly more mucus than normal, are draining steadily and silently down the back of the throat all day long. This is called postnasal drip, and a 2024 study confirmed that the average age of patients presenting with it is exactly 55. It is not a coincidence that this is your age group. Here's the frustrating part. Many people dealing with this have been taking antihistamines from the pharmacy for months, assuming it must be seasonal allergies. And there is a reason that strategy tends to disappoint. Antihistamines dry the mucus temporarily, but they do nothing for the underlying inflammation inside the sinuses that is causing the excess production. And dried, thickened mucus stuck at the back of your throat is often more uncomfortable than the original problem. The approach with the most consistent research support is something very simple and very affordable: regular nasal rinsing using a warm saline solution. A 2025 clinical review published in the journal Medicina, which surveyed evidence across a wide range of sinonasal conditions, concluded that nasal irrigation is an effective, safe, and low-cost strategy for treating and preventing upper respiratory tract diseases, and it is widely endorsed as an adjunctive treatment by ENT specialists internationally. High-volume saline rinses work by physically removing inflammatory mucus, reducing mucosal swelling, and improving the natural ciliary clearance function we talked about earlier. The very system that declines with age. The single most important word in all of that is consistency. 1 or 2 uses gives you 1 or 2 days of mild relief. Daily practice applied correctly produces cumulative, meaningful improvement. I will walk you through the exact method in the action plan. If you're still with us and finding this helpful, type number 2 in the comments so I know you're there. And if you haven't subscribed, please do. Your support keeps us going. Now, because number 3 is where I see the most surprise on people's faces when I bring it up. Because when patients come in and we start talking through what might be causing their throat to behave this way, their medications, the ones they have been taking faithfully for months or years, are simply not something they think to question. There is a class of blood pressure medications called ACE inhibitors, angiotensin converting enzyme inhibitors. These are prescribed millions of times every year. They are effective, they are well tolerated in most ways, and they serve a genuinely important purpose. But they carry a recognized class-wide side effect that the research documents clearly. They allow a substance called bradykinin to accumulate in the body, and in a significant proportion of people, studies report between 5 and 20% of users, that accumulation triggers persistent throat irritation and an ongoing urge to clear the throat. Crucially, this is not an allergy. It is not something unusual happening in your body. It is simply how the drug works, and your throat happens to be sensitive to the effect. Here is the detail that causes this connection to be missed so often. The side effect can take weeks or even months to develop after starting the medication. So, if you began a blood pressure pill 8 months ago and your throat started bothering you 6 months ago, you may never have connected those two events. But that timing alignment is exactly the pattern the research describes. A large-scale study of more than 27,000 patients found that adults over 65 had a 53% higher odds of experiencing this throat side effect compared to younger users. This is specifically relevant to this audience. If you take a blood pressure medication and you are unsure whether it belongs to this class, your pharmacist can tell you in under a minute. And if it does, there are alternative medication categories, ARBs, angiotensin receptor blockers, that control blood pressure equally well and do not carry this specific side effect. That conversation with your prescribing doctor is worth having. If you are still watching, type the word clarity in the comments because that is exactly what I want this video to give you. The fourth cause is one that surprises people, not because it is complicated, but because it is something they dismissed as too obvious to matter: hydration. But let me give you the physiology because this is not what most people think it is. Your mucus is mostly water. Its consistency, whether it is thin and fluid or thick and sticky and difficult to move, is directly related to how well hydrated the surrounding tissue is. Here is the clearest way I can put it. Think of maple syrup, fresh from the bottle, versus maple syrup that has been sitting open overnight. Same substance, completely different behavior. Your mucus behaves in exactly the same way based on your hydration state. Now, here is the specific aging-related wrinkle that makes this more than just a simple reminder to drink more water. Research has established clearly that the thirst mechanism becomes significantly less reliable as we age. A younger adult feels thirsty well before they become meaningfully dehydrated. In older adults, that early warning system is blunted. You can be dehydrated enough to noticeably affect your mucus consistency and your daily comfort without feeling particularly thirsty at all. Waiting for thirst to prompt you to drink means you are consistently operating behind the curve. And a mildly dehydrated state maintained day after day keeps your mucus persistently thick and sticky in ways that amplify everything else we have discussed today. A practical fluid target, referenced widely in clinical nutrition guidance, is approximately 30 milliliters per kilogram of body weight per day from all sources. Water, herbal teas, soups, and water-rich foods all count toward that target. But the behavioral key is deliberate, consistent intake throughout the day, not catching up when you feel thirsty. If you're still watching and this helps, type number 4 in the comments. If you haven't subscribed yet, hit that button and the bell so you don't miss any future videos. The fifth cause is one that rarely gets discussed in videos like this one, and I think that is a significant gap, because for a meaningful portion of older adults dealing with persistent throat mucus, the root of the problem is not in the throat, not in the sinuses, and not in the stomach. It is in the gut. Here's what the research shows. Your digestive tract and your respiratory system share regulatory pathways through the immune system and the nervous system. The health of your gut microbiome, the trillions of bacteria living in your intestines, directly influences how reactive and how inflamed your upper airways are. When the balance of the gut microbiome is disrupted, a state researchers call dysbiosis, it can activate immune responses that promote mucus overproduction in the airways. Not because there's anything physically wrong with your throat, but because the gut is sending inflammatory signals that the respiratory system responds to. This connection, sometimes called the gut-lung axis, is an active and growing area of clinical research. Multiple peer-reviewed studies, including research published in the American Journal of Respiratory and Critical Care Medicine and the Journal of Allergy and Clinical Immunology, have confirmed that gut microbiome disruption can trigger immune responses that promote airway inflammation. Animal model studies have gone further.